So I made us some minestrone soup, and I put some sauerkraut on top. And James is the same, it's just in a bread bowl. And he has garlic toast on the side with the tomatoes. And the minestrone was from this package. It was given to us. So I'm very thankful for it, because all I had to do was chop up a pot full of tomatoes for it. And that's pretty much it. Oh, and an onion. And then, I mean, it called for putting cabbage in it, but I thought, I'm just going to put some sauerkraut on top. So, I think I made a good decision there, and let's see how it is. So I didn't follow the package instructions. It's good, by the way. Because I didn't want to. But I just cooked the spices and the beans together with the tomatoes and some water. And then, like in the crock pot for, I think it was 6 or 8 hours on high. I can't remember. Anyway. And then, just before, like maybe half an hour before I wanted to eat, I added the macaroni. And there were 3 colors of macaroni in the package, which looked very pretty, but they all look the same color now. So I don't think there was any point in the pretty colored macaroni. Because I think the color just ran into the soup. Now, the ingredients are very simple. There's just cranberry beans, which they look like pinto to me. Mixed bell pepper, celery, carrots, parsley, pasta, which contains enriched semolina flour and herbs. That's all. So, I don't know. It was good, and there's no way that I would pay even this sale price of $3.99 for, because honestly you have to add, like I didn't use beef broth because I wouldn't. I just used water and it worked out good. And I didn't use bacon, which it calls for bacon, and so I guess I could have thrown in some liquid smoke, but it tastes good. Maybe tomorrow's I'll try it with some liquid smoke and see if it's better. I don't know. And it calls for Brussels sprouts or shredded cabbage, and like I said, I just added the sauerkraut. And 1 can of diced tomatoes, which I added fresh tomatoes. But really all that it came with was beans up to about here, and a spice package with the dried vegetables and stuff, the carrots and the mixed bell peppers, parsley. And then up here was a little bag, like a tiny little bag of mixed colors of pasta. So it's pretty cheap to have that much, buy that much pasta, and it's almost nothing to buy that much beans, and the rest is pretty cheap too. So honestly, even for the sale price, it's better to just look up on the internet a recipe for minestrone soup and try that one out, and then if you don't like that one, try a different one on the internet until you find one you like. Maybe combine a few. Because it's really not that hard, and this doesn't tell you how to make it. It really doesn't, because you don't know what the herbs are. It doesn't tell you. So this is pretty useless. Now, Project Blue Book, based on True Events Season 1, and what I found most interesting about that is that the History Channel put it out. And mostly like my ex-boyfriend and I, we called it the Hitler Channel because that's all that was ever on it was World War II. So it's interesting that they're branching out a little bit now. UFO stuff.
That's one of the best ones ever. Was it you that came up with it, or was it him?
Him. Yeah. He was really witty.
The Hitler Channel.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully he said it to a few other people, or somebody listens to me saying it so that it catches on.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's dead now. But there were a lot of things I liked about that show. It's basically like an X-Files, but the Scully in this is more the military, the Air Force captain or whatever he was, and the Mulner is more the scientist. Because, and I'm saying that because the Air Force captain or whatever, he's not really a believer so much. But at the end of the season, he starts to be a believer in some sort of UFO thingy. But these guys, they've been hired by the Air Force to basically calm the public down about these UFO encounters that they're having, and then make up stories to explain how these were natural phenomenon or something, and how the people just, you know, they thought that what they were seeing was true, but it wasn't. So they're the, what do you call that? I don't know. They're making up the stories that, and it's funny because I've heard some of these things about, you know, the weather balloon and the temperature inversion and the this and the that, right? And so, like I kind of in the back of my mind, I have learned these stories, and it's just funny to see them this way, right?
Well, I'm a true. Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I'm a true believer in UFOs, and they're done by aliens. The aliens are members of the CIA. There is an Air Force or a CIA air base right in Roswell. I mean, what do people expect? So these sort of sightings happened after World War II. Well, what happened in World War II was they blew up a huge bomb. Now, it was a little bit, a couple of them in Japan, but they blew one up in, in New Mexico. They did a test one, and it was overnight. I think sometime in July, maybe late July. And, you know, like the way it's presented is they were saying, oh, you know, it's terrible. The test was awful because they weren't sure whether they could do it or not because it was a dark and stormy night. Well, I'm not so sure they didn't intend it as a dark and stormy night. They wanted to keep it secret. So there were people the next day asking, what was that crazy thing? I think it was just the mother of all thunderstorms or something like that. So maybe it was just serendipitous, but you can imagine having to explain all this crazy stuff to people. So later on, when the CIA and all sorts of the Air Force doing all sorts of testing, all sorts of weird stuff, you got to come up with some sort of cover story. I don't think the KGB and others of their ilk in the Soviet Union were buying much of it, but you just got to do a cover story. So it's aliens.
That's what I was looking for, the cover story. That's the. Thank you for figuring out what I was not remembering. But anyway, these guys, they make these cover stories entertaining, and the way that they're doing the series is very good. It makes you interested in the stories, and I found that the easiest way to get to the bottom of what the real story is to look at it from a lot of different angles and a lot of different people's perspectives. So all of these crazy, I shouldn't use the word crazy, but all of these stories that seem like crackpot stories, like say sightings of Bigfoot or whatever. I mean, they might be useful for researching into something, right? That was happening around that location at a specific time or whatever. And so it's.
Bigfoot might have been Donald Trump on vacation. He's been around a long time.
I don't know. It might not be. I don't know. Bigfoot might not be a good example, but but anyway.
Well, there's always gorillas, Those weren't discovered until my granddad's lifetime, officially. The people in Africa knew they existed. Same sort of thing. You saw that documentary about that bigger than piranha fish in Africa? And the people there.
What, the Pacu?
I can't remember what it was called. It's a huge thing. It's got huge teeth. It's bigger than a piranha.
Well, it's not a Pacu then, because they're vegetarian.
There are all sorts of stories from the people in that area.
About.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah. It's one of the best documentaries
Getting
I've ever seen.
Getting bites out of their legs and stuff.
Well, there was, something like that. But there had been stories even before that. But this guy turns up. I think it was like, a huge big rip in his shoulder or something like that, or maybe in his leg. And he was saying a fish did it. Oh, yeah. That's a big fish story. That's one that really got away.
Yeah.
And then this guy went out, this photographer went out, and it was amazing. You could see the thing. They were you could see these reeds shaking. And then you could see them, and then they caught hold of one. Or something like that. It was huge. It was like as big as a loaf of bread, basically, and teeth to match. And it made piranhas look like minnows, a goldfish or something like that. So that is in your lifetime.
Yeah. So anyway, there's all these. The main thing is, at one point, like, there's these guys in hats. They call them men in hats. They're men in black, sort of. And they're
I like the way they're always wearing the fedoras.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So anyway, I love the fashions. I love the show.
Even a lot of
really
smoking.
good.
It was big back then.
Oh yes.
Yeah, you got them puffing up.
So anyway, they're talking to some of the men in black for a moment, right? And he's like, who do you work for? And the guy says, probably you could look at it as we work for the same people. That kind of thing. And I think that's pretty much the same sort of explanation in X-Files. When it comes down to it, you're looking at things and it's like, yep, we're basically working for the same person or same people, right? And I think that's what it is, It's funny how time really clarifies things, and it makes it a lot more obvious. I mean, some people like James would pick up on it right away and go, oh well, yeah, the military was testing on their own people and testing essentially on the public, without their knowledge, right? And so this is the government.
You're talking about the nuclear bombs. Yeah, they had the army guys there. I don't think they really realized what the level of radiation would be, but they were testing to see, if they could take the blast.
Yeah, and then they cover it up, So
Oh, they'd still be covering it up.
Oh,
I'm
sure.
pretty sure. Right?
They wouldn't want to have to.
Even after everyone's dead. Of course, the military guys were the guinea pigs.
They wouldn't want to have to pay out any kind of compensation or anything.
Or even to admit that they were
Or
stupid.
even admit to it, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. But, I mean, it puts a lot of things that happen now into perspective for people, or it should. You know, when you watch stuff like this and, oh, it's so obvious, right? And yeah, you're making an interesting story about it, but we really don't think that there's real aliens. You know, we're not
I think
that's not the
viruses
first
are
direction
aliens.
we're going in. We're going in. Yeah, but at the same time, you don't know what's been modified and whether it's being deliberately tested on people or anything. And I'm not a conspiracy kind of theorist. I'm not that. I'm just, things are obvious sometimes, and why ignore the obvious, you know? So
Yeah, it's just like you don't have to postulate.
no.
The aliens are right. They're crazy people. But
You know, within about 20 years, or within 20 years of these sightings, within 10 years, they're sending stuff out into junk and outer space.
Exactly.
20 years, they're sending people to the moon.
Yeah.
25 years or so, they're sending junk to Mars and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So,
So you know it
Well,
was already
we're the
being
aliens, you know?
researched,
Yeah.
right? And it's the same thing with you can extrapolate from there. You know, you can, this learned knowledge that you have from, you know, hindsight is 20/20 kind of thing, and you can bring it forward to now and look at things rationally, you know? And anyway, I remember there was, at one point I worked in Winnipeg doing Dutch elm disease inspection, and that was a great job, and it was a great group to work with, whatever. And the supervisor I had was very knowledgeable, and I really liked him, and unfortunately he died of cancer, so that's really too bad, because he was a great person, a great supervisor, and the world's lost somebody really useful. As well as being a nice person too, you know, it's...
well, so often those things really go together. But
Yeah. And so anyway, I had, when he interviewed me, there were a lot of questions about, you know, what I knew about Dutch elm disease and Winnipeg and this and that. And I mentioned something about having heard that it started there in 1975 or something like that, or that's when it was first detected. And so he gave a presentation to inform me once I worked there, and I was very thankful for it, because he had a whole bunch of pictures that he brought up. He did a really great overhead presentation, like a, well, I guess PowerPoint, right? Anyway, it would have been PowerPoint, but I'm old. And he was too, but somehow I think it was probably PowerPoint. But
well,
anyway.
I was even doing PowerPoints around that.
Yeah, so anyway.
So that would have been 2010 or something.
Yeah. So, and I could be wrong, and my memory could have been overheads, but I doubt it. So anyway, he did this presentation, and he had photographs of people working with Dutch elm disease, and they were wearing like Victorian sort of dresses, and the men, you know, were dressed in a similar style, not with dresses on, because that wouldn't have flown back then, at least not on the job. So anyway, so he set me
some of the
straight.
universities behind the scenes, it was going on. But, yeah,
But if anyway, the thing is if you look on the internet now, probably even, and like I had looked, most of my research for that probably was on the internet. I probably looked that stuff up just trying to find out about a place and a job and what I would be doing, and that's probably a lot of where my research for that was anyway. And what I got was that 1975 number, and he said, I don't know where this story started, because he said you can see that it's happened, it's been here in Winnipeg for a lot longer than 1975. And he was talking about how they used to it started when they were working in conjunction with the United States government on Dutch elm disease research. So that's where it started. So when you think about things, like oftentimes you think about the Canadian government research being completely independent from the American United States government research, or this and that, but a lot of the time not so, and certainly not disclosed. So but it certainly is useful to talk to people who have the information available to them, if they're willing to talk to you, rather than just looking things up on the internet and going along with that, because a lot of the time it's not true.
People get things wrong on the internet all the time.
Yeah. And especially with information like this, when governments are not going to disclose things, how do you get the truth? It's a little bit tough, right? So Dutch elm disease,
well,
I have a
sometimes
completely
it's not
different...
just disclosing. Not disclosing, it's actually disinformation.
Yeah.
So.
And you have to wonder a lot of the time, well, when they were doing research with each other, and was this a natural phenomenon, Dutch elm disease, or was this something that was somehow introduced? And for why, right? I don't know. It is interesting, though, to think about things like this. And I would definitely recommend this series. Would you, James?
Oh, yeah, if you're into that kind of stuff, I think you'll enjoy it.
Anybody would be into it. X-Files was very popular. And this is like X-Files, only based on true.
Yeah, in some ways I prefer it. X-Files was maybe spookier. But Duchovny, or whatever his name is, he had a way of making stuff, kind of spooky or something like that. But this thing is, they've actually done some research on it.
Oh, yeah.
More of a background sort of thing.